This is Detroit's Morning Answer with John Anthony on FM 92.7 and AM 1400. The Answer.
The United States Constitution is a revolutionary document. It's the world's oldest written constitution. It's rooted in experience, built upon self-evident truths, and designed to restrain radicalism and constrain power so that we may secure the blessings of liberty. It was not written by men who believed they could perfect human nature or engineer utopia. It was written to protect liberty, cultivate virtue, and forge a great nation of self-governing citizens. Why has ours succeeded when so many others have failed? What makes ours so unique? Many people might point to the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to bear arms, no unreasonable searches and seizures, those first few amendments to our Constitution that protected and codified our God-given rights. But they were just words on paper, what our founders would have called a parchment guarantee. The Bill of Rights is an incredible document, but it wasn't actually included in the original Constitution signed and written by our founders. The real beauty of the Constitution is its structure, its separation of powers. Our founders separated the powers horizontally between the branches and vertically between the states and the federal government. A carefully choreographed dance of ambition counteracting ambition, drawn up in Philadelphia and signed on September 17, 1787. These powers check and balance each other and prevent the centralization of power that would allow an American citizen's rights to be infringed. James Madison said it best in Federalist 51. If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and the next place, oblige it to control itself. Our founders fought for independence, sovereignty, and a free people's right to govern themselves. In writing our Constitution, they did not create new rights or invent new liberties. They sought to protect those we already have and defend against tyranny. Where other nations have failed, Americans succeeded and built the greatest nation in the history of the world.
That was Senator Eric Schmitt, who is one of my very, very favorite U.S. senators. I've battled if I should play that whole thing, but I thought it was apropos for our next guest, and it was just something, a reminder of our Constitution. And yesterday we observed Constitution Day, remembering, as the senator said, September 17, 1787, when the founders signed the U.S. Constitution in Philadelphia. You know, when you think about that document, born out of compromise and conviction, it has guarded our liberties for almost 238 years. It's more than words on parchment. It's the framework of ordered liberty, a covenant between the people and their Constitution. That's the heart of Richard V. Battle's work, a fifth-generation Texan, longtime community leader and award-winning author. Richard is chronicling the people who made America in his Made in America series. His newest book, Americans Who Made America, 19th Century Growth, Division, and Reunification. He takes us through one of the most defining centuries in our history, when innovation and expansion collided with slavery and civil war, and when a fractured union found its way back to being one nation under God. Richard, welcome to Detroit's Morning Answer.
John, good morning. Thank you for having me. And that was a wonderful introduction by the senator and yourself. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Richard, you've written that the Constitution is not just a historical document, but a living covenant. How do you explain its enduring relevance to generations who may see it as just some old or outdated document with words on it?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I would advocate that we should have a holiday for Constitution Day, because that document is what has given and is giving us the freedoms that we have today. But it only happens because individuals are controlled by it from gaining too much power, or they self-restrain, and that's the best case is when politicians become statesmen and restrain themselves because of what the document says to try to divide the power and restrict the power so no one person or small group obtains too much power and abuses others. And one of the greatest mistakes that's made is, and we hear politicians talk about it all the time right now, they talk about protecting our democracy. Yeah. We are not a democracy.
Come on.
Never have been a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. A democracy goes into mob rule. Aristotle said it best. Republics decline into democracies. Democracies degenerate into despotism.
Wow.
And the constitutional republic, the difference is it protects the minority political views, whereas a democracy, it's just basically majority rules, and you don't care about the minority political viewpoint. They have to step in line and follow what you tell them to do. So we want a republic, so we want to be protected when we're in the minority viewpoint.
You know, Richard, every time I hear a politician say democracy, even Republicans, I cringe. And when people
Yes.
say, you want to see a death to our democracy, I said, yeah, I do. I want to see death to democracy. I want to see the republic, the constitutional republic restored. Now, I'm sure you've heard the argument that the Constitution, especially from the progressives and the left of center people, who say the Constitution is a living document to be reinterpreted by every age. But there are some who, and I love a lot of the people that are currently sitting on the Supreme Court right now, who insist it must be applied according to original intent. Where do you stand, and how do you reconcile those competing visions?
Well, I think that's another great question. And so to me, to answer that question, the first thing we have to do is understand human nature. And so do we believe human nature is the same today as it has been since eternity, or do we believe human nature has evolved over time? And the people who believe the Constitution's a living, breathing document, they advocate that human nature has changed and we're becoming better, and so those old rules don't apply. And if that's true, not only the Constitution doesn't apply, the Bible doesn't apply, the wisdom of the ages don't apply. I would advocate that our human nature today is the same as it's been since the beginning of time. And I can illustrate it very simply with one example.
Please do.
If you look in the Bible, not for religion, but just for literature even, and look at the story of Adam and Eve, and everyone knows that, whether they're a Christian or not. Adam and Eve, they bit the fruit, and when the serpent showed up, what did they do? They pointed their fingers and blamed each other versus taking individual accountability. And you look at that, and you go to a little kid's birthday party right now, 4 or 5-year-old, and somebody drops something and break it, and the mother says, contend that that's the way human nature is the same today. And if human nature is the same, that means that the Constitution, the wisdom of the ages, the Bible, if you believe in it, all of those things are still relevant, and we can learn from those experiences. I believe smart people learn from their experience. Brilliant people learn from the experience of others.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Now, when you think of the Constitution, I'm sure you have it in your mind. If you could put one principle from the Constitution back into the forefront of American life today, which one would it be and why?
Wow. I would probably delete the 17th Amendment, the direct election of senators, because that changed the balance of power between the national government and the states. And one of the brilliances of the Constitution, as you enumerated in the opening, was the balance of power. And so U.S. senators used to be accountable to state legislatures because that's how they were elected. So instead of being elected for a 6-year term, the legislature could send them for a 6-year term, but if they did something a legislature didn't like, they could be recalled and a replacement sent to Washington. And that meant that the senators did their state's work. They weren't national representatives, if you will, and that gave the states more power. And ever since that amendment in 1913, the balance of power has continued to shift away from the states and more toward Washington.
Now, let's talk about this Made in American vision. Now, I saw that you put emphasis on the cans in Americans. And when you think about in this culture, it's obsessed with victimhood and what people can't do. How does reclaiming a spirit of can transform our outlook on America's future?
Well, I really appreciate you asking that. And so what happened, I had an epiphany 4 or 5 years ago, and I got sick and tired of the media, our culture, our politicians telling us what we can't do, telling our children that they can't have better lives than we have, telling us what we can't do versus what we can. And so as I started thinking back and thinking in the country, what's made our country prosperous all of these years were individuals with that American-do spirit who went out and they had a dream and they chased it. They saw something that needed to be done and they took care of it. They didn't wait for permissions. They just exercised that can-do spirit. And that comes from the twin liberties in our founding documents of economic liberty and political freedom. Those are the two things that are unique to us in the world, and that's what gives us as individuals. And they were individual rights, not collective rights, as some have advocated. And that's what gives us that freedom to pursue our careers, our families, live in that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that we were promised in the Declaration of Independence.
Wow. If you're just joining the show, we're talking to Richard V. Battle. He's a fifth-generation Texan. He's also a longtime Lone Star State business and community leader and award-winning author. His latest book is Americans, Who Made America? I love history. I am truly a student of history. You know, when you, as I've read many history books, they like to focus on institutions and battles. You focus on individuals. Why is that lens essential for rekindling this civic pride that I believe is so lost?
Well, I think it's crucial because it tells us other people achieve things we can also. And let me tell you how I got to that, because the first book I wrote was Made in America by Americans, not Americans. And that was a series of essays, leadership-type essays that could help people in their families, business, or organizations. And as I was talking to a host like yourself, we talked about Americans' Hall of Fame of Great Americans. And then I discovered there was one in New York City that's been there since 1900 I'd never heard of. And how many people get to go to New York City to see it? And then I had the inspiration, well, if you can't go to the museum, why not bring the museum to the people? And that's why this series, now 2 books are out, 18th century and 19th century. I highlight 40 individuals, some you know, some you don't. Even the ones you know, you may learn something you don't know, to show and illustrate that American-do spirit they had, and not only how it helped them succeed, but how it helped them impact the country and gift us this great country we have today.
Now, Richard, when you look at the 19th century, it was a time of, breathtaking innovation, railroads, telegraphs, westward expansion. But it was also bitter division over slavery and state rights. How did you balance the light and dark of this century in your book? Because it's just fascinating to me to hear how you were able to balance the light and dark.
Well, and I think it's difficult, but that's what gives me great hope for the future. We had a civil war in the 1860s where 600 to 700,000 American soldiers died in that war fighting for their principles. And yet, after that, we came back together. It wasn't quick, it wasn't easy, it wasn't pretty, but it happened. Part of it occurred with 1876 election that went on for 115 days between Hayes and Tilden, and it wasn't decided until Hayes acknowledged that he would remove federal troops from the South, the Reconstruction period, and the Democrats went ahead and let him become president in 1876 so that would happen. But yes, the bitterness Vicksburg, Mississippi was forced to surrender on July 4th, 1863. And they wanted to surrender earlier, but the federal troops wouldn't let them. And they were so bitter about it, they didn't celebrate Independence Day until 1944, 81 years later.
Wow.
So this was not easy, but the country did come back together, and it took people on both sides of the aisle to compromise and to give and take to want it to come back together. And that's the essential thing we need now. We need people to realize that despite our differences, we have more in common and we're better together. And so we need to put aside this win at all costs on every issue and come together again like they did.
Yeah, that's going to be so hard because, I forget who said it, but the Constitution was created for Americans. And for Christians, I forget which one of our founding fathers said something, and I may be doing a bad job and with the quote, but he basically said that the Constitution and this country was made for Christians. And when you look at how we've become the melting pot, people are not assimilating into our country and just rejecting outright where they came from. Is that part of why the Constitution is losing some of its luster and strength?
Well, and of course that gets deep into the political weeds, but I think that we can't have people in our country who don't ascribe to the Constitution and its values, regardless of what it came from. That's our governing law, the longest-serving governing document in history. And if people come here, they need to align with it. If they're coming here to want to set up a different government, that's basically a revolution within our country. Yeah. And regardless of what flavor it comes in, that will divide us. And we cannot allow that inside the country, and we certainly can't subsidize it.
And, this is sort of, I guess, kind of going to be a political question, too, because Jacob Howard, who was the senator from Michigan, he basically wrote the legislative intent as it related to citizenship. And now that's a huge thing, that if you make your way here and your child is born here, you're automatically a citizen. That's not what the Constitution says, though, is it, Richard?
Well, and that's argued quite a bit. My particular belief on it is it says that if you're born here and subject to the laws thereof. Yeah. And so it'd be like if you and your wife went to Switzerland and had a baby, the baby would not automatically be a Swiss citizen. Yeah. Or if you went to travel here, just even on a vacation and have a child, would expect them to be American citizens when they're citizens of another country.
Now, back to your book. Beyond Lincoln and the battlefield generals, who are some of the forgotten figures that you bring? Your book brings back into relevance.
Thank you. I hope we get a chance to do two illustrations if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of them that fascinates me, and every one of these I hope are illustrations and examples for our young people. I write so that young people can read this, late middle school, high school, and up can read these words and be inspired. Sarah Breedlove was born in 1867. She was the first one in her family born after the Civil War and born free because she was African American. Yep. And she left at 13 and got married. She had to do all kinds of just odd jobs to make a living, $1 a day. And she had a scalp issue, and she couldn't find a remedy. So she concocted her own remedy. She shared it with her friends. They loved it. She started selling it. She ended up building a company and changing her name to the name of the company, Madam C.J. Walker. Yep. Became the first self-made African-American woman millionaire in the United States. But what impresses me even more, that impresses me so much, was after she got rich, she didn't just spend it on herself. She became a helper for African-American women to succeed in the country. She gave back to the community and helped others come up the ladder. And to me, that was very impressive.
You know what? So many people don't know that story, and she was truly, truly an amazing person. You said you had another one. What's the other one?
Well, one I love Sam Houston. For anybody in Texas, he was our George Washington. But, and I do a lot of leadership stories about Sam Houston, but I want to mention his mother, which no one knows. And when Sam Houston, he'd been governor in Tennessee, he ended up being the first and third president of the Republic of Texas, governor of Texas, U.S. Senator of Texas, won the War of Independence in Texas. So, I mean, he was a great hero. But when he was 19, he was leaving to go with Andrew Jackson to fight in the War of 1812. And his mother on the back porch, bidding him goodbye, said, "If you show courage, you're always welcome. But if you show cowardice, never darken my door again." Wow. But here's the thing. She next gave him a small gold ring. Inside of it, so only he could see it, was the word honor.
Wow.
Sam Houston wore that ring every day the next 50 years of his life and died with it on. It's at the museum at San Jacinto now. And you think about that and all the things he did and all the decisions he made and the leadership and impact on Texas and America, and I can visualize him sitting there contemplating a decision and twisting that ring in the word honor.
Wow.
Honor.
Wow.
Honor coming into his head. And his mother's influence, not only on his life, but our lives through that is incredible. And so when I speak to groups, I tell them I wish my parents had given me an honor ring. Yeah. I highly suggest you consider giving your kids or grandkids honor rings and telling them that story so that every time they have a decision to make, they can sit there and think of the word honor.
Richard V. Battle. Oh, that is amazing. Really quickly, we got about 30 seconds. Where can people get the book?
My website's richardbattle.com. All books are signed there. If you want them inscribed for gifts, email me, richard@richardbattle.com. You can go to Amazon, Richard V. Battle, all 12 books, 11 Kindle versions, 8 audio versions.
All right. Thank you. Richard V. Battle, thanks so much for joining us on Detroit's Morning Answer.
My pleasure, John. God bless America.
God bless you. Guys, just a programming note. This Sunday, 9/21, FM 92.7 and AM 1400. The Answer, we will be providing live coverage of the Charlie Kirk Memorial Service. President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and high-level administration from the Republican Party officials are expected to attend. Coverage on FM 92.7 and FM AM 1400, The Answer. You can also listen at theanswerdetroit.com. We'll be right back.